So Disney and ESPN are reportedly trying to build their own sports betting app. Um, I think I've watched the sports betting industry grow over the past few years, and I think sports cards are going to be very similar to that industry when it comes to media. At least I hope so. I mean, maybe this is wishful thinking, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because I'm a media person within sports cards. But you've seen what ESPN has done with their sports betting. They've added shows, they've added personalities that are sports betting. Now, you could argue that the shows that ESPN puts out on sports betting aren't great. That the people on the shows maybe don't really actually they don't actually really know what's going on, or they don't know kind of the lingo or the topics or anything. But I think what ESPN has shown that they're willing to do, and I mean, it's very interesting how the shift with sports betting, because I think what you saw maybe 5 or 10 years ago, you saw it really was like sort of like a behind the scenes sort of thing where, there would be a clip of some announcer talking about it and it would go viral because it's like no one's talking about the spreads of the games. But now it's like every announcer almost is making comments about the spreads or the over-unders of these games. So obviously ESPN, being the biggest sports network, they want to get involved in this. I do think it's interesting, Disney being involved too. So it's like it's not just ESPN, it's ESPN, ABC, Disney, kind of because they're all owned by I think Disney is the parent company, I'm pretty sure. So they're all going to be owned by that. But what I think is that sports cards are going to maybe follow a pretty similar trajectory when it comes to a media perspective. I think right now we're sort of in an early phase of cards. Like the best comparison that I'd use, to be completely honest, is that the best comparison I've used for sports cards is like that we are when fantasy sports originally went online. So when fantasy sports first came out, it was all pen and paper. You would track all your stats. You'd send them to the league commissioner, whatever you would do. Your process was, and then sports fantasy sports went online, and that completely changed the game. That's sort of where I think sports cards are right now. With breaks, with online retail, with all that kind of stuff, with eBay, with Vault, with all that kind of stuff. It used to just be you would have to go to a show to, eBay's only been around for like 20 years. So like if you wanted to buy and sell sports cards, 15 years ago, you'd have to go to a show or you'd have to go to your local card store. You would have to trust those people too. That's kind of the other thing that I think is big about what a good thing that's happened now that sports cards has gone more online, is that there's more data behind everything, and you can't really trick anybody nowadays, to be completely honest. Like you can if you're if you're good at it, unfortunately, but for the most part you can't really trick anybody. So like with sports betting, it's been over the past few years that we've seen kind of a rise, probably a quicker rise than fantasy sports in general. But like I think the fringe fringe niches, I don't think that's exactly right, but like the fringe things that people are interested in: sports betting, sports cards, anime, cartoons, I just think video games is another perfect example. All of these industries, because of the internet, are starting to grow a lot more quickly. And I think overall, what's going on with that is because there's more people talking about it, and you can find more people talking about it. Like I said, if you were good to go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you want to talk to someone about sports cards, it would be pretty hard. But like nowadays, you can go to Twitter, you can go to Instagram, you can go to TikTok, you can go to YouTube, you can go anywhere, and you can find people talking about sports cards. Sports betting, same thing. It's exactly the same thing. I mean, you're seeing a rise in people, the people on TikTok, the people on Twitter that are giving out their picks. And I think that, like I said, sports cards, I think, is in a very similar trajectory. Do I think it's the next 5, 10 years we would see, ESPN come out with a show about sports cards? Maybe it's like a weekly thing. Maybe it's like an ESPN, the Ocho type of thing where they come out and they talk about sports cards. Who really knows? But I think we're still in such an early stage with sports cards when it comes to where we've come from, that I think, you see Disney and ESPN getting a lot more into sports betting, not just talking about on the air. They're trying to build their own sports betting app. I think that's a good thing, and that's sort of how I would relate it to sports cards when it comes to where I see the industry going over the next 5, 10, maybe the next few decades.